Good morning, and thank you for joining us for Bible Bits. 48 degrees in Phoenix this morning, the 18th day of January, middle of the week. Today, Jack Hayford reminds us of why it's important to keep the Sabbath. Jack was my pastor in Van Nuys, California when we lived out there at Church on the Way. He was also the dean at my college that I went to, Life Pacific Bible College. And he was also the head of the Foursquare Church for a while. And recently he passed, about 2 weeks ago. Went to be with the Lord in glory at age 88. But today we're going to explore, as he was recently on a redo show of Dr. Dobson. That's a focus, well, it used to be Focus on the Family, now it's Family Talk. And without further ado, let's hear what Jack has to say.
Ministry was approaching 20 years, and the concept of a day off was unheard of. As kind of almost it would have challenged godliness, It was a part of verifying your dedication. But I didn't consider it something that was militated by God or His Word. It's just something I enjoyed doing. Well, the confrontation when the Lord impressed me that I was getting in His way because of my frenetic activity was what got me aside to think about these thoughts. The third thing that distilled out of this was my coming to terms with the fact that God was saying, here is a principle that I have set aside a day, I have shown you this is the way, just as surely as you can't jump off of tall buildings and not expect to be splattered on the sidewalk. I mean, you are not constructed for violating the law of gravity. You cannot violate the law of the Sabbath. Not related to the law of keeping it for salvation, but the law as a creation ordinance. You are a creature on this planet, and God I had to chuckle when I saw this. God could have said, well, I observed the Sabbath, but I wasn't tired either.
Yeah. Why? That's the first time I'd ever heard that thought. God has no limitations. He is all-powerful and all-knowing. He did not observe the Sabbath because he was worn out.
Right. Nor because he couldn't think of anything else to do.
Right. So our excuses are gone.
Right.
The fact that we're busy and we need to do it, or that we're not tired, those excuses don't work because neither of them apply to God. He did it in order to bless that day and ordain that day.
Well, the most profound impact on me came when I realized that there was a subtle form of idolatry in my violating the observance of a day of rest each week. And the idolatry was the supposition that I was wiser than God, that I had more strength than Him. And the obvious question would come to mind, well, if I'm using those days, how will I get my work done? And the Lord brought to my mind the parallel of giving patterns. Now, we practice regular tithing, and I've learned long ago that I am much better off with only 90% of my income to start with than with 100% because of what God does in blessing the 90% as a result of obedience.
Ministers, especially pastors, do have a tendency toward compulsive overwork, don't they?
Mm-hmm. And the need is great, and you understand that, but God was not saying, because God sanctified the Sabbath did not make Him less loving, less compassionate, less merciful, or less committed to human need. So it goes right along with the package of his love and generosity of character.
Jack.
And that is true. God was not tired, and He didn't need to rest. He did that for our example because He knew we needed the rest and we'd burn out. So next time you're trying to be Superman or superhero, Hercules for God, he probably laughs and says, move on, child. You want to do this without me? Won't happen. See, without Him we cannot, and this is a saying of John Wesley that Jack brought up, and without us He will not. So there's the dilemma. Like Moses striking the rock a few times, thinking, okay, you rebels, you're not going into the promised land. Well, God didn't tell him to do that. And when we think that we're doing the work of God, when we're not, and we're not like speaking for God and doing the right thing for God, guess what? We don't get to enter into the promised land. We might have good intention, or we might be sort of dead to right, but dead. Best to be right and do what the Lord asks. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Always remember that. So, when it comes to the Sabbath, when it comes to giving, don't close your hands, because all things are God's. Open them up. So as you give, God can also pour into your hands. If your hands are closed, you can't collect anything. And the other thing is, get some rest. You need it. Have a good day. That's today's Bible Bits. May the Lord bless and keep you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow, should the Lord tarry. And if it's not His will, and He takes us, or He takes me, either way, absent from the body is present from the Lord, with the Lord. And I tell you what, I'll be looking for you on the other end. I'll be waiting for you if I get a head start. Some of us get to graduate before others. Never know. Jack just did. So, God bless you, Jack. Rest in peace.